pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic. Flight outside of speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
All right, as we always do here, folks, I'm going to need to make sure that everybody can hear me right now. So over there in chat, let me know whether or not you can hear me as we go into our next episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. It's episode 9 this week, and y'all know what to do. Click and just make sure, tell me 5x5, tell me you can hear you good, AOS, that's what I like to see. Hello from Brazil. Hey, Paulo, how's it going? We are back here on this Saturday for another special episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. Why is it special? There are big things happening this week that we are going to talk about over the course of the episode. Quick things really quickly, whatever. I can say that twice if I want. If you've never seen NASA Spaceflight Live before, this is the live show that we do with NASA Spaceflight. It's sort of right there in the name. It makes sense, right? NASA Spaceflight Live. You get it. But we are live right now, unless you're watching a VOD, in which case we were live earlier, but now we're not live. Whatever. Look at this. All right. So while we're here doing the actual show, if you have a question for us, if you're watching it live, it's live and interactive. So if you have a question for us, tag us in chat. We want to do things and make a little bit of a discussion. We're not like news like, and now we're doing the next thing, right? We want to actually talk with y'all as we go over the space topics for this week. So if you have a question for us, make sure you tag us at NASA Spaceflight. That'll get your question highlighted in chat over here, and that is a good way to answer, to interact with the stream. Now, if you ask a question, try to keep it relevant to the topic that we're talking about, right? When we start going, we're going to start talking about DM2. That's sort of big news this week. I don't know, Launcher 1 test flight, Starship fires. Whenever we're talking about DM2, if you have a question that's relevant to commercial crew, or specifically DM2, or something along those lines, that's the time to ask that question. Like if you ask a question about Pluto, whenever we're talking about DM2, it might not get caught there, right? So just try to keep your questions relevant to what we're talking about. And then as we go through, we'll get your questions. If we can't answer them in real time, hang on, because we do put them into a queue, and we'll roll back to them and try to answer them sort of as we get to the Q&A segment of each portion, the Q&A portion of each segment. So to recap, we'll talk about DM2 a little bit, then we'll answer your questions about DM2. We'll talk about Launcher 1 a little bit, and then we'll answer questions about Launcher 1. And we'll sort of step through it that way. And then everything that we can't get to, at the end of the show, we have a segment we call Max Q&A, and at the end of the show, we'll try to get to all those just generic questions that maybe we didn't have time for in each section or weren't relevant to what we were talking about. But we do want to make sure you understand it's a live and interactive show. We are here to answer questions. We're here to chat with you about cool stuff that happened in space this week. Now, the other part of NASA Spaceflight Live is we couldn't do it without your support. So as you go through, we're going to get some super chats that happen, that sort of thing. We're going to get some memberships that come through the channel and all sorts of different things that happen, right? We might not see those in real time. We might not call those out in real time, but in between each segment, we'll go through and we'll say, dude, thanks for joining, etc., etc. Thanks for the super chat. If you have a super chat question, those do make them stick out a little bit more, and we try to get those as part of the Q&A things. But the whole end-to-end thing, it's interactive. Welcome to NASA Spaceflight Live. Tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight if you have questions. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your patience because we can't always get to everything in real time. And that's it. Nobody comes to the streams to hear me talk, as you know. So let's pop over to our subject matter experts for this week. With us, I have Thomas Burghardt over here on the side. Thomas, how's it going today?
It's going good, Das. Good to be on the show.
You ready for DM2?
Am I ready? I've been ready for DM2 for years, Das, but absolutely.
I was born ready for DM2. That's a dumb question for Chris G as well. Over on my other side, we've got Chris Gebhardt. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, Das. How are you?
You look like you're ready for DM2. You've got like DM2 related things in the background of your Zoom picture there, huh?
You know, I mean, it's a minorly important flight this week.
Minor. It's just a little bit important. So y'all, over the course of the show, our subject matter experts for today, we've got Thomas Burghardt, we've got Chris Gebhardt on this side. Thomas is a writer. What do you do? Writer.
Writer/reporter.
Writer/reporter for
and
NASA
webcast host now.
The webcast host, there you go. And Chris G, of course, is the assistant managing editor for NASA Spaceflight. I get that right, Chris?
You did indeed.
All right, cool. So without further ado, let's hop into the topics for today. Like I was mentioning on the other screen, we're going to be talking about the human exploration and operations. We're going to talk about DM2, Demo 2 that's coming up. We've got some Virgin Orbit news that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Starship as well. What's going on with Starship down at Boca Chica? We have the launch recap and preview. I don't have like a teleprompter, right? I'm reading a Word document on the side over here. That's why I look this way. And then we'll do Max Q&A, and then we will thank all our supporters at the end of the show. So let's just jump right into it. And first up, we've got Thomas talking about human exploration and operations. Thomas, take it away, dude.
Yeah, a little bit of big news out of NASA this week, and it's pretty related to the Demo 2 flight that's coming up and a lot of the big NASA programs that we've been talking about recently. For those who are unaware, Doug Loverro has been basically the head of human spaceflight for NASA for about 6 months now, and he has just resigned as the Associate Administrator of the Human Exploration and Operations Directorate. This came just a couple days ago, and this is the second time that position has changed in less than a year. If you guys remember, Bill Gerstenmaier, who held the position for quite a while, almost 8 years, I believe, was reassigned from that role last year. And Loverro was his permanent replacement. In the interim, there was a man by the name of Ken Bowersox, who will now once again take over as the head of human spaceflight for NASA, and he is no stranger to NASA's human spaceflight mission. He has flown space 5 times, spent a total of 211 days in space, having commanded both the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station. So he will be resuming that role, and he's going to be overseeing a lot of the big missions under NASA today, including Commercial Crew, which of course has the all-important Demo 2 test mission this week that we're going to talk about a bit later, as well as the Artemis program. He's going to be overseeing that as well. So crucial times for that directorate, and Bowersox is an experienced guy. He's held this position before in the transition between Gerstenmaier and Loverro. And he's of course an astronaut himself, so he'll be well prepared and well suited to fill this role, at least in the interim. And interestingly, he was actually on the station during the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, and as part of his career, he came back aboard a Soyuz instead of a shuttle, so he's flown on both vehicles. And again, 5 shuttle launches, so he's a very experienced guy. He also previously worked at SpaceX for a couple of years, so he's been seeing the program from a lot of different angles. But I want to talk to Chris and Das about their thoughts on this change, because it came just 2 days before the agency flight readiness review for Demo 2. And is that bad timing? Is that going to cause problems, do you guys think?
Chris.
I think it was fairly clear and obvious that it didn't really have anything to do with Demo 2. And anything regarding to the Commercial Crew program. It really all seemed to stem from the lunar landing contracts for the human landing systems. And it really, honestly, I mean, we don't really know. It had something to do with who was selected and how the selection process was carried out. And Doug Loverro's resignation letter said something to that effect.
Right. But we don't know exactly.
Basically, I made a decision on who to pick, and I have to live with that, so I'm leaving. Well, there were only 4 that we know of. 3 got it, and 1 didn't, and the one that didn't was Boeing.
There was actually 5. There were 2 that didn't. Boeing was one of them. The other was a small company that I had actually never heard of until today. Boeing was one of the 2.
Heard of, well, that didn't even know there were 5 until you said
so
it today.
Case in point.
Only the 4 made. Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to draw the conclusion and draw the line between which one wasn't chosen and then, I made a mistake, I have to leave. What I will say, very short tenure, 7 to 6 months. He was in this job. I can't speak for internally to NASA, but I can speak for some of the press side of this. I'm not sure how many people are going to be sorry that he's gone, because this is the man who on one of the Starliner post-orbital flight test briefings or teleconferences to reporters openly told a reporter that NASA has every right to hide potentially fatal errors from taxpayers when taxpayer money was used. Not exactly the best look in a human spaceflight program when your administrator is really trying to talk about transparency. And you've got a head of human spaceflight saying, "No, we can totally hide things. It's fine. You don't need to know. Why do you need to know that?"
Where did he say? Did he say that like in a press conference or like a quote to a reporter?
In a
or what?
teleconference,
A teleconference?
with reporters after. I think it was after.
I think it was
either
after the investigation
disclosure.
finished.
Yeah, it was either that one when the investigation finished, or it was when the revelation of the second issue hit about a month after.
Oh yeah, and they called another conference.
The flight landed. Yeah, I just can't remember which one.
Which one it
It was one of those. It wasn't like the post-launch conference. It was a bit after the mission.
It was a while afterwards, right?
Yeah.
What was the context on this statement? I mean, that's such an outlandish statement. Was it like,
So
well, it's
the-
an active thing going on, or after the fact we can hide it? Like that seems like so hard to believe, right?
So the statement was kind of an in general, we can hide it no matter when, assertion from him, but it was in direct relation to a question about why they did not say anything after the second issue happened, and why did they then sit there and say everything went fine at the post-landing news conference, and not, and of course that was with the information we knew then.
Right.
Boeing has been very forthcoming and open, so it's very much worth noting that this is not a criticism against Boeing, but a criticism against someone who had been handling a multi-million-dollar taxpayer project.
Right. So, I mean, definitely big news a couple days in advance of such a big thing that's being, can I say, driven by that department?
Yeah, led or overseen, but
Yeah.
It appears to have not been related to Demo 2, and it surely hasn't gotten in the way, because I know what we're going to talk about next is how close we are to Demo 2.
Right. And so I guess...
What a transition.
Yeah, what a transition. Well, it's interesting because if you're doing things properly, losing somebody at the top like that shouldn't really shake things up too much, right? Because
and to be fair, the main person at NASA who has been overseeing the commercial crew program is Kathy Leaders, the commercial crew program manager. And she was at the FRR. She has been a grounding, wonderful constant throughout all the ups and downs of the congressional funding battles and the issues that both providers have had to work through with Starliner and with Dragon.
Right.
So she is still there, and she's really the one handling it.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Do this for me one more time, Thomas. How do you pronounce his name?
Bowersox?
Bowersox.
Bowersox? Look, I've seen his name so many times, and every single time, because I play video games for a living, I thought it was Bowser Socks.
Oh,
like Mario. And you said Bowersox or whatever, and I was like, wait, what? Is there a letter missing in there? So, no offense, it's just me glossing over a word thinking that I knew how to read it, and as it turns out, that's the first time I've heard anybody say it out loud, I guess.
Well, there you go. That's fine.
So I think that sort of is a really brief bit of information about what's going on with the human exploration and operations systems, the shake-up there at the top, losing a person at the top. But like I was sort of saying, I think that if losing the person at the top of the org shuts everything down, you probably have bigger intrinsic problems anyways, right? So not seeming like this change will affect DM2. Is that a fair thing to say, y'all?
Yep, I agree.
Still marching ahead. So speaking of marching ahead and DM2, DM2, of course, is the big Demo 2 launch that's coming up. What are we demoing? This one's for Chris, isn't it? Yeah, Chris, take us away on Demo 2.
Yes, we are. Well, it seems kind of weird to say that we are demoing sending people to space, because that's something the United States has done since 1961. But here we are, demoing it again. Of course, all of that statement is in jest. Of course, this is the first time that the Crew Dragon will fly with people on board. It is the first time the Falcon 9 will launch people, and it's the beginning of the commercial orbital transportation era. If the weather is our friend on Wednesday, which we'll get to that in a minute, but if the weather's our friend, we could it would be the beginning of the new commercial era for space exploration, and really a culmination of something that not just Elon but NASA has been wanting to do for well over a decade at this point. And it's been a long road. It's in many ways very hard to believe that it's right here. And that we are 4 days away from it right now. So, oh boy, yeah. This week's going to be absolutely incredible. And I think we can say now that for everyone listening, when we had talked a few weeks ago, NASA spaceflight was going to be not at the Kennedy Space Center press site, but at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, about 5 miles from the pad instead of 3. And we wonderfully got word that we were one of the very few organizations that got moved over to the Kennedy Space Center. So we will be bringing you live streams Monday, Tuesday, and of course Wednesday from the countdown clock and the flagpole. And I am very excited about that and very happy to bring all of that element to you, including being as close as we can with the camera to the pad, and including with our own camera, get to show Doug and Bob go by in their Tesla Model X's as they drive by the VAB and the press site on the way to the launch pad. And that also really helps the planned 9-hour launch broadcast we have planned for all of you on Wednesday as well. And yes, you heard that correctly, 9 hours with some special guests as well. But really, let's talk about the meat and potatoes of this. And Das, for the pictures, just kind of go through whenever you at the pace you feel.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing was this one, what we're looking at right now, crew arrival. The crew arrived on Wednesday, just before 4 p.m. Eastern time. And that really marked the beginning of the end of this journey to get us to the first commercial crew launch. Arriving about a week ahead of time because they needed to do some last minute practice and an actual dry dress rehearsal, which was completed today with the Falcon 9, where they went out, they did everything except fuel Falcon 9 today. They did the fueling of it yesterday with static fire, which we'll get to soon. But this arrival was earlier than what we've become used to in US space flights. Normally they come about 4 days before launch. This was 7 because all that time they get to actually interact with the rocket when it's stacked on the pad. Dragon doesn't roll out until about 5 days before launch, when shuttles and Apollos used to roll out months, a month or 2 ahead of launch, giving them time to do all the things before they arrived for launch that they now have to do here. So this was the picture of them coming in on the Gulfstream jet. And then, of course, we had the very successful flight readiness review that lasted 2 days. Das, you can go ahead and go to static fire if you want.
Cool.
On there. Because the flight readiness review happened very close to the static fire, or the conclusion of the flight readiness review happened very quickly to the static fire yesterday. And that static fire was the last time, very crucially, that NASA gets data on the load and go procedure of pumping all that densified liquid oxygen and kerosene into the Falcon 9 starting just 35 minutes before liftoff. All previous NASA human missions have fueled after the crew is actually on, or before the crew goes to the pad. So this will be the first time for US space flight that we will fuel after the crew is safely on board and Dragon's all buttoned up for its launch. And go ahead and show the static fire here, Das, because because this was really cool. And the static fire, from everything that we know, went very, very well. It fired up right on time at 16:33 and 31 seconds, which actually, for myself and Julia and John Krause and Rich Engel, who were all at this location where I was filming and photographing it, all we knew was that it was 16:33. We didn't know they were targeting the 31 second. So we're all doing the countdown, right? Looking at our phones going 10, 9, 8, and then nothing. And of course we're in the boonies. So, I didn't have any contact with you guys. I didn't even actually know if the stream was still working at that point, but we're just standing there going, it didn't static fire. It didn't static fire. What happened? And then whoosh, there it went. which I just think is a nice little story about, how when you're out there trying to bring these live things, sometimes all of our signal, like it did yesterday, went into just the video and getting it out, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't have any way of knowing on the back end that everything was still fine. So we're all out there kind of starting to panic. Which is funny.
Chris, I can jump in on that just really quickly. Yesterday for the static fire was really interesting because the team was out there. I wasn't available. I had some family stuff going on, and then they were out at the edge of signal. We had never been there before. We've never streamed from there before, right, Chris?
We had never have, no.
Yeah, we'd never streamed from that location before because I think Playa Linda was closed, yada, yada, yada. And so right when they started to need help troubleshooting the signal, I got hit by a tornado warning here, and we had to shelter in place in my basement. So I'm on my phone trying to frantically type to people like, oh, try this. And then Chris couldn't even get the information, right? Because Chris didn't have signal out there. So even my local news didn't have signal. Like the weatherman was all pixelated and looking bad. And I'm like, what is even going on today? But we got lucky and we got the static fire stream. All we needed was 20 seconds worth of bit rate, and we got 20 seconds worth of bit rate. Ship it.
Man, did we get it. That was so good. But here's the thing, and this is going to lead perfectly into the weather forecast, DOS, is you might be asking, well, that seems so random. Why would they static fire at 16:33 and 31 seconds Eastern time on a random day? And that's because the launch is scheduled for 16:33:31 on Wednesday, and they wanted to do a complete day of practice to the second of how it has to unfold on Wednesday. And if you saw in that video, it was an absolutely gorgeous day. There was not a cloud in the sky, a nice breeze coming in off of the Atlantic. And oh, what a difference 5 days can make.
Yeah.
Because here is our launch weather forecast for Demo 2. So we do have a 60% probability of violating our weather constraints for flight through precipitation, the thick cloud roll, and the cumulus cloud roll. So let's break this down a little bit. Flight through precipitation doesn't just mean that the rocket will actually fly through rain. I believe there's a certain limit to how close a rain shower can be to the rocket as it ascends. So it could be 3 miles away, but that's within the exclusion zone for rain. So that counts as flight through precipitation, even though the rocket wouldn't actually go through it. It basically means rain might be violating that exclusion zone for it. Thick cloud rule, this is a couple of different things, but primarily it has to do with the visibility and tracking of the rocket. It has to do with the higher and the thicker the clouds, especially in Florida summers. You can get ice crystals that build up in large systems or building storms that will become thunderstorms, but before they become electrically charged. So we don't want to be flying through those thick clouds. And then our cumulus cloud rule is also known as our lightning rule, because cumulus clouds are the ones that can really produce the really devastating lightning strikes, not just cloud to ground, but also lightning strikes that would be generated by the static friction as the rocket ascends through the cloud. So we also have to account for that. Upper level winds look great, of course. Booster recovery weather looks great, as does solar activity. The only thing we don't really have in this launch execution forecast, because it can't really be accounted for, is the abort weather in the Atlantic up the east coast of the United States and across the Atlantic to Western Ireland. That all has to be determined day of. So you might be wondering why you don't see it on here. And that's why, because it's so precise, and they're looking at 50 specific locations across the Atlantic, and a certain percentage of them have to go in the 7 distinct abort zones that Dragon has if it needs to pop off the top of the Falcon 9 to protect Bob and Doug. So
Chris,
yeah.
For the weather forecast, it's not just the forecast at the pad. It's like forecasts all over, because if it's a beautiful day at the pad, but it's thunderstorms in the abort zone, they don't go, right? Question mark.
Yes. Now that's the actual launch weather day, not the mission execution forecast that we're looking at right now. This is literally just what is the chance of Kennedy Space Center local weather prohibiting a liftoff on Wednesday. and does not include the added calculation of the abort zones. Right? We should, when we get to the L-1 briefing, the launch weather officer, Mike McAleen, will be on there, and he will probably talk about the abort weather forecast at that point when we're a little bit closer and everything that goes into it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it should figure upper level winds are absolutely fine for a Falcon 9
For
launch,
now.
right?
For now.
Well,
don't
for
jinx
now,
it.
yes.
They'll hear you.
Yeah, true. But, you can also see, that we are expecting scattered and broken clouds. So not complete overcast conditions. So if we do get that 40% chance of good weather and acceptable weather, which we have beaten many, 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 many times, a 60% forecast of violation is nothing to really frown at right now this far out. But you can also see that we're expecting scattered and broken clouds. So we're not expecting full overcast conditions,
Right.
at least right now. So it's great, but I really want to save some time here, 10 minutes for questions,
Sure.
actually. And we can keep cycling through the rest of the images and everything as we take questions. Yeah.
Cool. So I've got some questions here. Let me go to
Yeah.
you guys do some answering. Where's my 2-box? There you go. We'll put both of y'all up there. And I might have to fix Chris's camera crop there because he's like way off on the side. Hang on a second. No, he's fine. Yeah.
Which way should I go?
That's it. Just hold still. You're good. Right there. It's
There
fine.
you go.
Just go with it. Zoom updates just are the bane of my existence. So first question here about DM2. This is from Carl, and Carl says, are there any emergency condition the astronauts actually disembark the Dragon capsule up the tower? Or do they always use the Super Draco? So asking about the different ways the astronauts can get away in case there's an emergency.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are two. If it is a critical, like the rocket is failing type of a fuel failure,
Like a fast fire.
Yes, like the Super Dracos would ignite
Right.
and Dragon would get out of there very, very, very quickly. But there are certain things that could cause the crew to need to get out, certain pad system malfunctions or things like that wouldn't necessarily be a oh no, there's an impending risk of a conflagration on the pad or something like that. But it's prudent to get them out, have them get themselves out and get off the tower instead of sending a crew back to get them out.
Gotcha.
Specifically, that crew, at least in the shuttle era, was called the closeout crew. The crew that actually puts them in the craft, straps them in, seals the hatch, and are the last ones aside from the astronauts to leave the pad before liftoff.
Gotcha. So what other ways can they get away from the pad? Like they go down the elevator, there's a parachute, they jump off the side?
No, they would not go down the elevator. The elevator for launch, when the closeout crew leaves, is locked at the base of the pad for liftoff. So if they needed to get off the pad, they would make use of the slide wire emergency basket system and get away to an armored vehicle that would protect them and allow them to drive away from the pad if so needed.
Because so they do have that.
That's how they would do it.
DM2, they have the slide wires there. They have an armored vehicle. It's not like getting back into a Tesla. There's a special vehicle to get them away from the pad, right?
Yes, a vehicle that, should they be able to get in it and then the vehicle explodes, would protect them,
right?
As well, and
the
offer
rocket
protection. Yeah.
The rocket,
not the armored vehicle.
Okay.
That would be bad.
Not like a mob hit or anything like that.
Pronouns.
Okay.
But it's worth noting that those baskets are like, if a hydrazine tank ruptures, right, and there's a like poison or toxicity need to get away from the pad, those baskets aren't for, oh no, the rocket is failing. That's what the Super Dracos are for.
That's like you literally take off, but it's just the dragon that uses the Super Dracos to take off the top and then land out in the ocean.
Yes, right? The dragon in the trunk would come off the top of Falcon 9 in a pad aboard. Yeah.
And we would land. I said uses the Dracos, then land in the ocean.
Yes,
it lands with parachutes.
It does. It lands with parachutes, and in the event of a pad abort, depending on wind, the average would be approximately 1.2 kilometers east of the launch pad is where Dragon would splash down in the Atlantic.
So here's a question: do they have like a boat that's standing by in case that happens? Is there like a close-in
Yes.
shore boat or a helicopter or something?
Yep. Rescue forces would be deployed from Patrick Air Force Base for pad aborts and early first stage aborts
Right.
off the Falcon 9. There is another recovery force stationed in Charleston, South Carolina. And that is so that recovery forces can reach them within an hour, no matter where they splash down.
Gotcha.
During an abort. The only iffy thing on that would be if they had to do an abort to the west coast of Ireland. And this is where the commercial crew program mandate that the capsules be able to sustain a crew for 24 hours comes into play.
Right.
Because it would take a little bit longer to reach them in the Western Atlantic.
Gotcha. So a lot of different ways that they can stay safe in an abort, whether they're coming down the slide wire, whether they're using the Super Dracos to basically jump off the top of the rocket in the Dragon.
Yep.
There's another question along the same sort of thing there. Does NASA have a list of the 50 zones? This is from Joey.
Yes, NASA
but we
does.
don't know what it is.
Exactly.
Do we have a list of the 50 zones?
We do not know.
Okay.
All we know is that there are the zones are from Florida to North Carolina, from North Carolina to Virginia, from Delaware up through the Canadian Maritime provinces, and then not between Canada and Europe, but then just off the coast of Western Ireland. So there are 4 abort landing zones. And then there are 50 specific potential splashdown locations that they're looking at in those zones.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So another question here. Is there a second team of astronauts who will fly if the main team gets sick? So we've heard all the thing about the 2 primary astronauts, but is there a backup crew just in case they got sick?
There is not.
Really?
There is not. So if Bob and Doug got sick, the launch would be delayed. Yep.
So no like Apollo 13 German measles thing,
Nope.
swap in somebody?
No, because this is not a standard space station crew rotation. Right? Every station crew member for long duration flights has a backup, so that exactly what we saw earlier this year with the Russian crew that launched on MS-16, they were originally backups. And one member of the prime crew injured his eye, so they swapped them out with the backup crew. But that's what normally happens on station missions. But this is a test flight that was not originally supposed to be a long duration flight. It was supposed to be 10 to 14 days. So Bob and Doug do not have backups for their mission.
No kidding. I hadn't thought about that because it's a demo mission, right? It's not a regular crew mission that they have scheduled in the normal rotation. It's a demo mission. I hadn't even thought of that. That's a great question right there. Let's see if we can get one more.
It really was, yeah.
Yeah, one more really quickly. Let's see here. I'm just going to grab... Oh, so this is from S.A. Diablo, and we know that the astronauts are riding out to the pad in a Model X, right? Bob and Doug riding out in a Tesla Model X. Do we know if that Model X has been modified? Specifically, does it have umbilicals for climate control? Or do their suits plug into the Model X in any way? Are they carrying a briefcase that does that? Like, do we have any details on that?
So it very much looks like from photos we got today during the dry dress rehearsal that yes, there were cooling hoses. There were environmental control hoses that you could see plugged into Bob and Doug's suits, just like they will plug in when they get into Crew Dragon, when they were sitting in the Model X. Now, whether that was because they really modified the Model X to have that, or it was a box that you just couldn't see because it was behind the seats, we don't know. But there are definitely environmental controls for the suits in the Tesla Model X.
Gotcha. So it may just be like a briefcase sort of thing, like the I say
like the
old
Apollo astronauts carried with them.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like the old astronauts back in the old days when we went to the moon.
I mean, to be fair, that was sadly 50 years ago.
Yeah, that was 50 years ago. Jeez. So it may be like a briefcase or some sort of portable device that's in the back, a little portable AC. We don't know that it's built into the Tesla, right?
Right.
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha. All right, we got a couple more minutes for a couple more questions, and the rest of them we'll push into the Max Q&A segment. What are the contingency plans for another day in case the weather doesn't cooperate for DM2?
The backup launch date is Saturday the 30th, correct? There's actually a
Indeed.
2-day gap, and why is that?
2-day gap because this mission, it all comes down to how much time it takes to rendezvous with the space station after liftoff and accomplish the demonstration objectives that Bob and Doug need to, in terms of like manually testing things out that they couldn't test on demo 1 because there was no crew, so they just had to test all the automated systems on Dragon. And that basically aligns to, it needs to get to the station between 19 and 24 hours after liftoff. And the Thursday and Friday launch opportunities would not result in good rendezvous angles between Dragon and the International Space Station. It would just take Dragon too long to reach it for those objectives, or it would reach it too quickly. Because Dragon can actually reach it far quicker than 19 hours if it actually needed to for something. So this is all just about threading that, what do we need to do for the manual test objectives.
Gotcha. All right. And I think we have time for maybe one more question here. This one is from Daryl. What's up, Daryl? This is about the launch escape system. So do we know, was the launch escape system armed for the static fire? And then I'm going to add some more stuff to it. Do we know when the launch escape system that would use the Super Dragos actually gets armed? Because clearly it's not armed when they're loading people into the rocket. It's just safe or something.
Correct.
And at some point it becomes active, and it's like, from here on out, this thing could go if the system thinks that there's something that needs to get them to safety, right? So
exactly.
Go.
Yes, and we do. We know all of that. So you're going to have to remind me of the first question, Das, because I'm very much like Hans, and I need one question at a time.
Was it there for the static fire? Was it armed for the static fire?
Oh, yes. We do indeed believe it was armed during the static fire. A full-up test, that way if something had gone wrong with Falcon 9, they could have gotten Dragon back.
Gotcha.
During the static fire. And it was meant to be a complete launch day practice, and that would include arming the Super Dracos. So the way it works is Bob and Doug are put into Dragon, and the hatch is closed, all while the Super Draco system is disarmed. Hatch is closed, sealed, Dragon is pressurized up for liftoff and for flight. The crew access arm is pulled back at T-minus 42 minutes. The Super Draco abort system is armed at 38 minutes, and fueling begins 35 minutes prior to liftoff.
And that's fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket, but fueling of the abort system motors is done like way in advance, right?
Oh, it was done weeks ago. Yeah, Dragon was fully
like
fueled weeks ago for flight. Yeah.
And that's a storable propellant that doesn't, boil off or anything like that. They can fuel it literally days and weeks ahead of time, and it's good to go.
And it just sits there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it just sits there. So that's all good. And what's interesting too, it's worth noting just really quick, I know we're out of time, but the Super Dracos, once the first stage separates, right, we don't need the Super Dracos to get away from the second stage, because we would just use Dragon's regular Draco thrusters to pop off the top. But then for the abort modes that would put Dragon down somewhere between Delaware and the Canadian Maritime Provinces or off the western coast of Ireland, would require either prograde in the direction of travel or retrograde against the direction of travel burns of the Super Dracos after it separates from the second stage, in order to aim it for one of those pinpoint landing abort locations that NASA's going to be watching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of those modes are part of the launch count up, I guess, after T0. And we're actually expecting to hear all of those modes get called out to the crew during ascent.
Yes,
so
and if you want
that's going to be cool to listen to.
And if you want to see exactly when each of those abort modes begin, there are 7 abort modes to the 4 abort locations. And if you want to see what all of those are, which ones need Super Draco burns, which ones don't, we published an article on that called Examining Crew Dragon's Abort Modes. So head on over to NASASpaceflight.com, and you can read all about what the abort modes are we need them on Wednesday.
Somebody can get that link to put into chat, I think, right?
Yeah.
All
definitely.
right. So moving right along with our next topic, we could probably sit here and talk about DM2 for hours. Oh wait, we are going to sit and talk about DM2
Oh
for
wait,
hours.
that's Wednesday.
Oh yeah, geez, that's Wednesday. What did you say? Like a 9-hour stream on Wednesday, right, Chris?
Yes. I think it's okay to reveal one of our special guests, right?
I
Just
mean,
one
if
of our
you,
special
if you
guests.
sure, I'm not in charge. I just press the buttons.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and announce that if you're very curious about how and when you can spot Crew Dragon as it prepares to rendezvous at the International Space Station, well, we're going to have Declan Murphy from Flight Club on our live stream about an hour and a half or so before liftoff.
Yep.
We'll have the time to give you, but he'll be there to take you through all of how can you track it and how can you see it.
So literally, of the many different things that we're going to talk about in our DM2 live stream extravaganza, one of them is going to be a tutorial on how you, if you're in the right spot, can go outside and try to see DM2 flying over. I think it's parts of Europe that
Western
you might be able to
Europe,
see.
like
Western
England and France and Ireland can probably see it about half an hour after launch if we launch on Wednesday.
Gotcha. All right. So a lot of different content coming up for that on Wednesday, if we launch on Wednesday, right? But for now, we're going to keep on charging ahead. And the next thing we're going to talk about here today on NSF Live is Super Chats. Apparently that's what the document says, and I just read it. Whatever. Hey, Moon, welcome.
So are you like Ron Burgundy? If we just put it on the teleprompter, will you just read it?
Well, the funny thing is I put it on the teleprompter. Like, I put the document up there to read it. No, but hey, Moon, welcome to Padrad, and then upgraded a membership to Red Team. Moon, we appreciate the support there.
That's awesome. Thank
coming
you.
through. Yeah, that is awesome. And let's go on to the next thing. And Thomas, we're a little bit pressed for time here because we go over on DM2. Virgin Orbit. What is going on with Virgin Orbit out there?
Yeah, we were all hyped up for one giant launch to happen this upcoming week, and then Virgin Orbit comes out of nowhere and says, actually, we've got a second pretty important launch to go with. The debut flight of a brand new orbital-class rocket. Virgin Orbit has been developing the Launcher 1 rocket for several years now, and they have just announced that the first launch window for their first attempt to reach orbit will be this Sunday from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, or 1700 to 2100 UTC, and that's on Sunday with a backup window at the same time on Monday. And that is their air-launched Launcher 1 rocket. You can see it here, a great photo by Jack Beyer. Carried under the wing of a Boeing 747 that used to be a Virgin Atlantic passenger airliner. Now it's a rocket launch platform in the air. They will take off from the Mojave Air and Spaceport in California on Sunday. And I actually have a graphic showing the flight plan and everything. Das, if you could pull that up, that would be cool.
Yeah, got it.
While you're talking about that, I just want to say this is so cool because it's not just a new orbital class rocket on the same week that we have a new rocket capable of launching, or a rocket now capable of launching humans for the first time. This is the first plane takeoff, airdropped, liquid-fueled rocket.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
which is really cool.
Because we've had the Pegasus rocket by Northrop Grumman, which is solid-fueled. This is the first liquid-fueled, horizontally launched orbital-class rocket. And hopefully, on Sunday, they'll be the first one to reach space, so that will be very cool. But yeah, they will fly out over the Pacific Ocean, and they're going for somewhat of a polar orbit. You can see they're basically flying straight south during the launch, and you can see the drop zone there off the coast of San Diego. And they are going to climb to an altitude of 30,000 feet, typical cruising altitude for an airliner. The aircraft will actually pull a pull-up maneuver and then release the rocket into a kind of nose-up attitude and light the first stage of the rocket. It's a two-stage rocket. We will see that ascend up into space, and if all goes well, it will end with deploying a simple mass simulator into low Earth orbit. And if that goes very well, of course, a maiden flight, there's always a lot of risk behind it. And I want to bring up an interesting quote from Virgin Orbit's press release about when they announced the launch window for Sunday. They said that maiden flights, and this is across international and all American kind of development programs, they said maiden flights have statistically ended in failure about half of the time. So they are very adamant that the biggest thing behind this is to get as much data and learn as much as they can from this flight. If they don't reach orbit the first time, that's okay. They will learn from it and improve on their next attempt. But for you guys, do you have points of concern, points of confidence? How are you feeling about the debut launch of Launcher 1.
I'd like to. Are you
You-
asking
you know-
us or chat?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
asking you guys. What are the feelings towards a brand new rocket debut? Because that's always exciting.
Oh, I can't wait. I just hope that there's a live stream. Because that was the
Right.
very crucial thing that was not in that release.
Yeah.
Was if they'd have I mean, they've been very public and very open before.
Yes.
So I would hope they would have one
Right.
for all of us. Especially since they've been so open about like, look, when we release it, we hope that this is what happens, but we don't really know. It's all about gathering data. That's what this is. So, I would hope that setting that expectation, they'd show it to us live.
Yeah. I agree with
they
that.
have
I mean,
to know
live
by
streams.
now we don't hold failures against people.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I know in the past they have come like really near term or near like in real time updates on like Twitter and things like that. So there will be live coverage. I believe we don't expect a webcast, although we can hope that that might change. And even if they don't do a webcast, I think something to keep in mind is that Rocket Lab, another small sat launcher that very recently debuted their rocket, didn't live stream their very first launch, but then after that has given live coverage for all of their launches. So hopefully,
true.
if the demo flight doesn't get webcasted, but it goes well, that they will feel more comfortable giving us a webcast for the second launch and going forward.
So
Although I would also love a webcast on Sunday. So Virgin Orbit, if you're listening, we really like to see it.
well, we just got there's a bit of
Richard.
information in the studio that says that they have confirmed that there will not be a live stream for
Right.
the test.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So
So
There
I
we
like
go.
live streams, but that would be a hard one for us to live stream because you'd have to be out in the Pacific Ocean
Yeah.
on a boat. Remember that flight path that
Jack.
we
yeah,
saw,
boat or in a
right?
plane.
Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we'd have to be way out there if we tried to live stream this one ourselves.
I mean, I'm not half joking. We could try parachuting Jack in close to the close to the
Parachuting
drop
Jack
zone.
in.
That'd be funny. But,
The NSF
we're
company jet
definitely
offered to be
looking
a
forward
chase
to
plane.
the launch, though.
All right.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming, and it is nice to see another dedicated small sat launcher come online.
Gotcha. And so we've answered one of the questions. One of the questions we got from Vibes was, will they be streaming this? And we just talked about this really quickly. What is the difference between Virgin Orbit and Virgin Galactic? Who can give us that in like 2 sentences?
Sure. All right. So Virgin Orbit, their goal is to launch small satellites on this Launcher 1 rocket into orbit, serving the small sat market. Whereas Virgin Galactic is aimed at suborbital space tourism with Spaceship 2, another air-launched vehicle, but carrying people above the Kármán line and back, or above the Earth's atmosphere, most of it, and back on a suborbital trajectory without going to orbit. So two different
Gotcha.
missions.
All right. So two
Basically,
totally
I like to think of
different
it.
things.
Yeah, I was going to say I like to think of it as Virgin Orbit goes to orbit. Virgin Galactic takes you up high enough to see the galaxy.
There you
It's
go.
interesting because it doesn't like take you to the galaxy. Like you go Virgin
Right.
Orbit. and
No,
you
it
go-
doesn't. Sadly, no.
Guess you're already in the
Although-
galaxy, but whatever.
Although if we're in the galaxy, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we need to move on to the next topic here because it's one of the big topics that I know that a lot of people like to hear about every week. Starship. What is happening with Starship? Out at Boca Chica. There's too many nose cones. I've been loving the names, the
The
thumbnails.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's hop over here real quick and talk about SN4, SN5, SN6, nose cone stacks, whatever it is. And wow, that's a big picture. Let's fix that picture. And this is going to be everybody talking. So I'm going to let y'all take it
Yes.
away.
So first off, a big thanks to Mary. And Mary, if you are listening, I hope you are safely indoors in air conditioning and resting up after the big 2 weeks this has really been for Starship SN4, which is, might you say, Thomas, singed but
Yeah.
not broken.
Yeah. We saw, if you were watching our live coverage or our video that we posted afterwards, they did a static fire, and there was plenty of fire. It looks like they burned the outside of the thrust skirt a little bit. It looks like some GST might have gotten knocked loose and caused a leak of some kind that was being ignited. They've been working hard since then to get some repairs done, and the vehicle is still there, and the vehicle is, from what we can tell, not really in bad shape. I mean, the outside of a Starship is supposed to survive re-entry, so I would hope it can survive a little bit of extra flames at the end of a static fire. So if all goes well, and they can, inspect it and be confident that they can fix whatever GSE was involved and things like that, I think it's too early to rule out that SN4 will stop testing, right?
Yeah, that reveal though, because we were
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
this stream all live together, and we're like, "Yes, it did it! Yes! Oh God! Oh God!
Yeah.
Oh God!" You know?
Yeah, for us,
It's
it's
on
like,
fire.
oh, there's the static fire, and then the dust cloud clears, and there's still way too much fire around the base of the rocket.
But,
Someone
you know,
pointed out it was just doing a Delta 4 impression, really, so...
yes, it was.
Chris, I'm going to pause really quickly here. Can you do me a huge favor? In Zoom, can you go to your video settings and mirror your camera?
Oh, we're trying
Thomas,
to get Chris
you keep
to
talking
look
while
at
Chris
what
does
we're
that.
showing.
Chris, there's just a mirror my camera setting there. Just click that for me.
How does that work?
It should flip
I
you.
did it. I
Did you hit apply? Okay.
yeah.
Why didn't it mirror the camera?
Nothing changed.
No, it's watch. Look at the preview. It's flipping on the preview. It's not flipping on the broadcast.
That's
Oh, what the...
how does flipping your camera on your end and not flip it on my end? Okay.
Yeah.
Moving right along. Sorry.
Okay. Anyway,
Anyway,
Go ahead.
we
Go ahead.
tried.
SN4.
Like, that, my friends, was a fascinating look at how our conversations digress when we're all together at an Airbnb for a launch,
Right.
and nothing can happen. Anyway, what you were saying, Thomas, right, is exactly right. You know, this is a stainless steel ship that is supposed to survive atmospheric reentry with very little thermal protection system. So it is not surprising that from the steel construction perspective, it survived this. What was absolutely incredible and a testament to either how the failure occurred, but also how the teams handled it, was that was the fact that thing didn't explode with that much oxygen and methane in it. I mean, the slightest leak could have been devastating for this. So that in some way should be good validation of how good the safety systems are when you have something like this. But they also probably learned, just like the first time, you know, Gemini aborted on the pad, the first time the shuttle aborted on the launch pad, like, you learn what you thought you needed versus what you actually need, and you can beef up that sound suppression, that safety, that water deluge system, which, yes, primarily is sound suppression, but it serves the backup purpose of that if there's a pad abort, you can spray down your rocket and stop fires from happening.
I'm actually going to quote Kathy Luders, who, of course, we were just talking about with Commercial Crew.
There we go.
Never underestimate the value of a failure, right? Talking about the Crew Dragon failure.
Yes.
Well, the Starship team's going to learn a lot from this too, and hopefully, and I'm really hoping that they can say, all right, we repaired the GSE, Starship itself looks fine, the Raptor looks fine. Let's proceed to a hop test. I would love to see this thing fly again.
Yeah.
Because of
Now,
course,
do you-
if it doesn't happen, waiting for SN5 isn't going to take that long. So
Yeah,
Well,
right.
no, I mean, we think it's ready. I mean, SN6
Yeah.
might be ready by now. I don't know. I haven't seen the latest videos and photos from today yet.
yeah,
but
lots of
it brings
Starships
up
just waiting in line.
Yeah, it brings up a good point though. What you were saying is that, you know, like, it wouldn't surprise you if they still hopped this one. It wouldn't surprise me either once the damage is, and I'm sure they've done the damage assessment, and they might have an idea internally at this point what's going on with it. But do you think they'd redo the static fire? Because I would imagine they wouldn't, like, if this was something that, a failure that was not on the ground side, but like something leaked on the ship side, that they wouldn't want to take off with something on fire,
Right.
except the engine, which you want. Like,
Yeah. So I think it depends on what exactly happened. And again, what we think happened was some GSE developed a leak right after the static fire. So I think I agree with you. If it happens on the Starship side, like the plug into the Starship is what actually leaked, then they're going to want to fix that prior to launch, because you don't want it leaking after it leaves the pad. If the failure was contained to the GSE side, like the GC itself leaked, then it doesn't actually matter, because once it leaves the pad, the vehicle is away from that equipment that has failed. So I think if they could just repair the GSE and go from there, I don't think a redo might be necessary. If there's something on the vehicle itself, I could see them doing another static fire test. And then if they abandon SN4 entirely, said let's just continue with this with SN5, I think SN5 will see a static fire test at least one prior to doing any hop tests. So yeah, there's a couple different options they can go there. I think it depends on where that analysis comes to as a conclusion.
Agree. And I realize we've been using the acronym by a question that just popped up in chat. GSE, ground support equipment. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't introduce that, but yeah.
When we forget and just say an acronym, do exactly what Jan did and, and ask it in chat, because we know what that means, but not everyone might. So yeah, GSE, ground support equipment.
Yeah, and that's referring specifically to, we think, some sort of fuel line or other connection to the base of Starship, right where those flames were developing. We think something came loose and something was leaking, which of course was then being ignited to cause the fire.
You can see the missing pipe in the image here.
Yep.
Yeah,
or you
exactly.
can't see that. You can see where the missing pipe would be. It was right here.
Used to be,
and there used to be a pipe that went down like this. And before the static fire, there was a pipe there. And after the static fire, there wasn't a pipe. There was a missing pipe and a fire coming out of that hole. So
yes. Yeah, and I mean, ground support equipment, GSE, is basically the catch-all phrase for if it doesn't go if it's not meant to go skyward with the rocket, it's ground support equipment.
Yep.
Right.
Gotcha. But I mean, moving on from SN4, we've mentioned the too many nose cones thumbnail. We've got a bunch of new hardware for further starships down the line, and again, whatever happens with SN4, once they complete SN4's test campaign, we're expecting SN5 to go even higher. If SN5, as long as SN4 completes a hop test, SN5 will go up to, now we think, 3 kilometers. That's a new test flight, right?
It would be if that bears out. Yeah, it would be. Because we've been hearing 150 meters and 20 kilometers. So that's new. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a new FCC filing, I believe it is. I don't know if it's FCC filing or an FAA thing. I'm pretty sure it was an FCC thing, for communications and
probably for the community. That's usually what comes first, and then the FAA will give their rubber stamp of approval and close the airspace. Yeah.
So there's sort of an interim altitude that they're going to hit between the 150 meter hop, which is what we saw Starship did, and Danny just confirmed FCC thing. But also before they go all the way up to 20 kilometers, which is the kind of altitude where we'd see that belly flop maneuver and the final pitch to landing, which I am anxiously excited to see one day, but we'll get there when we get there. I don't think 3 kilometers would be high enough to do something like that. What do you think, Chris?
I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I mean, just thinking about it, this could be something where they want to get a little bit higher to test some of the thrusters, the RCS thrusters and everything that they still need. I don't know. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, it could also be a high altitude hop, right, where they just want to try to validate more of the system, because if you think about it, 3 kilometers up as you're accelerating, you're not at max Q yet. Certainly,
but you are reaching higher speeds and things. So like the nose cone and that aerodynamic fins would all now be in play, versus a 150 meter hop where none of that really matters.
Well, and that's what I'm thinking, is that the 3 kilometer flight might be something to do with the nose cone RCS thruster testing. Because we know that the following nose, well, there it is, DOS, thank you, perfect. You can see the hole in the nose cone where one of those RCS ports would be. And yeah, I'll go out on a limb here. I don't know if this is true, but I'll go out on a limb. But Starship just won a lunar landing contract that will require thrusters to be placed higher up the body. Now all of a sudden this new intermediate hop gets introduced. Maybe this is something that gets them data not just for Starship, but for lunar Starship, for the human landing system as well.
I'd say that's not a bad prediction. I could definitely see the test campaign being adjusted, especially if there's some extra data points they need for a lunar optimized version. I could see that. I haven't thought about that before. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to good thought, KK0314 in chat, because I just had it too. 3 kilometers, they could also probably shut down the Raptor and turn it back on again.
That's
at
true.
Altitude, but they could arc it out just enough so that if the engine restart didn't happen, it lands harmlessly in the Gulf.
Right there, yeah.
That would be a live stream.
There you go.
That would be a live stream.
Failed restart with the ballistic
in case anyone had any doubts, yes, we will try to bring live coverage of any and all Starship films.
Yeah, right.
So don't worry.
Yeah.
But that's the other change. For SN5,
Oh, sorry,
we expect actually more than one Raptor, right?
Yes, 3 Raptors for that too. So a whole different type of test campaign there with, and they will have to restart the Raptors in the air eventually, just like they had to
Yep.
do it for the first time on one of the Falcon 9 flights. So we know that's coming. But I want to go back to kind of explain why I think this might have something to do or be connected with the lunar element of this, is because the contract that SpaceX, the national team led by Blue Origin, and Draper
Dynetics.
Dang
Draper is part of the national
knew it was a
team,
D.
but then
I
Dynetics
knew
is
it
the
was a
separate
D.
one.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Is the contract that all 3 of those companies won was only for 10 months.
Yeah.
It's only the phase 1 part of the contract, at which point there's a potential to down select to 2, or all 3 could keep going. So SpaceX needs to achieve things in that contract as well that isn't just Starship in general, right? Because Starship in general feeds into it, but then they also need to be testing some of the more specific lunar landing things to show NASA that continued progress on the system to not be down selected. So that's why I think some changes are likely to do with that for what we're seeing.
And a huge part, again, of Starship's bid, and one of the things that NASA has pointed out when say, wait, why did you pick Starship for a lunar lander? SpaceX has laid out a very rigorous test schedule prior to serving any human landing missions. And that if SpaceX can demonstrate through a bunch of different test flights that how much progress they're making and that the Starship vehicle is proceeding well, that will go a long way towards being one of the few that gets down selected. So definitely
Yes.
an improved sort of test campaign would be beneficial.
Yeah, gotcha.
Very much so.
Y'all want to do
Very
some
much so.
questions about Starship? I've got a big old list on Starship here.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll start off up here with
Aw,
air
Hopper.
guitar. Wait, what?
Nice Hopper.
Oh,
Hoppy. Yeah.
copy. We'll start off with one from Air Guitar here, and they say, maybe we'll talk about it on the stream, but do we know when SN4 will do the 150-meter hop? So where are we right now with the 150-meter hop schedule?
I think it's still up in the air because, like we said, we don't actually know if SN4 will do the 150-meter hop. If there's significant damage from the fire after the static fire test, they might choose to remove SN4 and proceed with SN5 for any further testing. So until they make that decision, at least officially, we won't know any sort of timeline for any potential hop.
Gotcha. So that
there's nothing. Sorry, and there's nothing from Cameron County, including like road closures. There's nothing from the FAA like airspace closure notices for this. So
Gotcha.
not in the immediacy is what I would say. And I'd honestly be shocked if any type of large-scale testing occurred on Starship before Demo 2 launches.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
makes
I
sense.
think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, like even if they want to redo the static fire or something like that, I think we're looking at after Demo 2 is up and safely on its way to the station.
Yep.
If it launches Wednesday, who knows if it delays 3 days? They might just say, all right, well now we've got Thursday, let's fire up Starship, you know?
And that sort of rolls exactly into the next question here. Are there any timelines for super heavy testing? We're still on Starship right now.
We
We don't know anything about
Starship.
super heavy.
Well, actually, I want to answer that a little bit differently.
Okay.
We are. This is Starship, not super heavy. Although the entire system, according to like SpaceX's new website, is Starship now.
Right.
So from SpaceX's point of view, we already are because it's the whole program. But no, more to your point. While the actual like bending of the steel is not for the super heavy booster, but for the Starship component of it. These systems have a lot of similarity. They use the exact same steel. They're the same diameter. They use the same welds. They use the same propellant. They use the same pressurization systems. They use, honestly, they use the same engines. It's basically just you're just kind of bending the steel in a slightly different way for super heavy. So even though it's Starship, it is also super heavy testing that's already going on, which is one reason I know, Thomas, you and I have talked about this on previous episodes as well, but it's very much worth reiterating. that you and I expect the super heavy part of that to go quickly because of all the lessons that have already been learned on Starship that are directly applicable to the booster.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Super Heavy is a Falcon 9 booster scaled up to Starship size and using the Starship components. But it's really is simpler than the Starship spacecraft itself. Of course, nothing in spacecraft is really simple per se. But yeah, I think if Starship is able to complete a full test campaign, including some high altitude hops and things like that, scaling that to a Super Heavy booster will be relatively straightforward.
Gotcha.
And I think I could see that definitely
Yeah.
proceeding quicker than the Starship campaign has.
Yeah,
Alright.
more quickly than what we're used to with other rockets when stages are
Right.
completely different and use completely different engines and
Right.
they're
Yeah, we're talking about the same engines. We're talking about the same materials that are making it up. It's just a different size and a different number of engines, really.
Yeah.
exactly.
They will be testing, I believe the grid fins that are going to be on Super Heavy are different than the ones on Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, so
Well, they
that'll
have to
be a
be bigger.
change. Right, yeah, much bigger. And then of course the landing legs aren't really legs, they're just fins that's going to land on rather than some deployable legs that we're seeing on Starship. So
Right.
there's another difference, but the legs are simpler, so maybe, easier to test that. So
Well,
yes,
yeah, because from what we know, the legs on the booster are static.
right, yeah, exactly. They don't pull
Yeah.
down from underneath, so that's yeah, they need to be tested to the point where yeah, they have to support the weight of the Super Heavy booster, but they don't have to they don't have to test the deployment mechanism because there is none. And so there's differences there, but hopefully that means it's actually simpler.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yes,
So
exactly.
all the other questions on Starship there's like 20 other questions we were trying to get to. We'll try to push those into the max Q&A here, but I see there's so many questions that came through for Starship, and we need to start moving on to the next topic here so that we can have a little bit of time at the end to roll back to those. So if we didn't get you the question there, I know we missed an awful lot of questions. Really quickly, Dave Wolf, thanks for the $5. Here's a few bucks to cover a bit of your bandwidth costs. We appreciate the super chat there, Dave Wolf. Thank you very much. We can do this because of your support. But next up here, let's see here. What are we talking about next, y'all? Launch recap and preview. So what went on this week and what is going on next week? So Thomas, take it away with the recap first.
Yep, let's take a look. We had 3 orbital launches in the past week, the first of which was from right here in the United States, United States Space Force 7 mission, launching on a ULA Atlas V rocket on Sunday from Cape Canaveral. And this mission carried the Space Force's X-37B spaceplane into orbit on its 6th mission overall. And that was the first launch on Sunday. And then later on in the week, we had a cargo mission to the International Space Station from Japan, the HTV-9 spacecraft from Tanegashima Space Center. And this was actually the retirement flight of the H-2B rocket and the HTV spacecraft to be replaced by a new HTV-X cargo spacecraft and an H-3 rocket. But H2B does retire with a perfect 9-for-9 launch record, so hats off to the teams at JAXA and Mitsubishi Launch Services. And of course, the cargo spacecraft is currently en route to the space station after launch and will arrive on Monday to be grabbed by the Canadarm and docked to the station. And then finally, we had a Soyuz launch on Friday, just yesterday. And that was from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in Russia, and this was carrying a military satellite for the Russian Aerospace Forces. We believe it was an EKIS-4, also known as a Tundra Force satellite, which is a missile earning warning satellite for the Russian military. So another successful Soyuz 2 launch this week, and those are the 3 launches from last week.
Gotcha. So coming up this week...
This week we've got 2 orbital launch attempts coming up, and we've touched on both of them already because they're both pretty big. We of course, first off will be the Virgin Orbit flight no earlier than tomorrow, and that window goes from 1700 UTC to 2100 UTC on Sunday, May 24th. A backup attempt the next day. But that will be the maiden flight of the Launcher 1 rocket by Virgin Orbit.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, no earlier than Wednesday, as hoping the weather cooperates, we will see the first crewed SpaceX mission and the first crewed orbital flight from the United States since 2011, the Crew Dragon Demo 2 mission, launching on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And that liftoff is scheduled for 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. That's 20:33 UTC. And there should be a stage 1 landing, of course, on Of Course I Still Love You in the Atlantic Ocean. And again, we're keeping an eye on weather for that mission. Currently projected 40% chance of go weather at liftoff.
Right.
Hoping that trends in the right direction between now and Wednesday.
Gotcha. All right. So those are the launches that are coming up this week. That both test launches, I guess, huh? First launcher of
Yep, they are both
Launcher
test
1?
flights, correct?
Yeah, and then that huge deal. Help me out here. Is it it's just under 10 years since the last launch of humans from U.S. soil? Just under 10 years?
Eight, just under 8 years, 11 months.
8 years, 11 months. So
Yes.
not quite 9 years.
Oh, right, yeah.
Not
it's
quite
just,
9,
yeah,
yes.
You're right.
Gotcha.
Because it was July 2011.
Because I've seen like 10 years and I've seen this, but it was 2011. We're in 2020 now. It's July. We're not to July yet, so it's just under 9 years is the right way to say that.
July 8th, 2011. Yep.
Gotcha. All righty. So that's what's going on. And again, y'all, to reiterate that SpaceX Falcon 9 DM2 going up, we are very closely watching the weather on that one because right now it's like 40% go, right, y'all?
Yep.
Yeah. So hopefully that trends in the right direction, like Thomas was saying. Let me see if we've got any other questions here about the launch schedule. Not really the launch schedule, but we've got the max Q&A. Did we miss anything else there? We talked about OTV.
No, we didn't miss anything, but there is something that is worth watching. A couple of weeks ago, Rocket Lab sent out an email saying they were going to launch by the end of May. The Don't Touch Me Now mission. But we have not heard anything since, and we are 7 days away from the end of May. So
I believe we actually have an indication because there are NASA payloads on that flight from the Elena program, and that website does get updated occasionally. I believe we're looking at early June now.
Would make sense.
Yeah,
at
exactly.
Point. Yeah.
But I don't. That is not happening in May anymore. But that is looking at early June. And Rocket Lab will announce a full launch window once they're really confident and like, yeah, we're going to be ready for this date. So that's coming up soon, but not this week.
Not yet. Gotcha.
And of course, that mission's delay has nothing to do with a technical readiness on rocket or payload. It's just simply the reopening, the gradual reopening of New Zealand from the COVID-19 pandemic that is affecting that. Yeah.
As well as all the teams that are supporting that, because there are NASA, NRO, and maybe even something else. There are like 3 organizations that have payloads on that rocket, and of course all those teams have to be working to support the launch. So that'll come up probably in the next couple weeks.
All right, good deal. And hey, while we were in there, we got a new member, Vladimir. Vladimir, welcome to the Red Team. Thank you for supporting the channel here so we can bring all the stuff. And then also we have a special guest in chat. What's up, Mary? How are you doing?
Mary!
I know. Thanks for popping by the stream today. I just saw Boca Chica Gal in chat over there. So
give it up for Mary, guys.
Yeah,
give it up for Mary. All the thanks for her. Yes.
Hopefully you're resting in the air conditioning right now.
Yeah, we caught her in the 5 minutes that she doesn't spend filming every day. You know,
in the 5 minutes. She's probably filming right now, and she's just like running a time lapse and logging into YouTube. Like. All right. Of course, if you don't know who Mary is, Mary Boca Chica Gal is the person out at Boca Chica who brings us all of the crazy good videos, live streams, camera feeds, just everything, pictures, everything that comes out of Boca Chica is fantastic, and Mary is out there making it happen. So, Mary, thank you so much for everything you do. Y'all want to do some max Q&A here?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we got an entire set of max Q&A. I feel like this new monitor is too high. I mounted a monitor on an arm, and I gotta look up at it now to see the max Q&A questions. But here's a question that I've seen pop up a couple different times. What is the fate of SN4 when they're done testing it? So, supposing it survives, supposing it does its hop and it lands, do we know what they're gonna do with it? Cut it up, turn it into Cybertrucks, put it as a gate guardian, use it as a water tower for Boca Chica Village? I don't know.
I would assume they'll find a way to recycle as much of it as they can. Yeah. I mean, the COPV tanks, the engine. I'd imagine they'll recycle as much of it as they can.
It'll be very similar to Starhopper. Take as many components as they can to use elsewhere, and recycle anything else.
Gotcha. So here's one about Demo 2. This is from Timothy. Timothy said, is Demo 2 carrying anything in the trunk? So we know that Dragon has the trunk. Sometimes it can carry cargo in the trunk. Is DM2 carrying anything in the trunk? Or does the crewed spacecraft use the trunk as cargo area?
It certainly can, because this is the same Dragon that will be tasked with making pressurized and unpressurized cargo runs to the station starting later this year.
Right.
The crew missions can also take up spares. They don't have to have an empty trunk with them. For the test flight, no, nothing is going up in the trunk, and nothing else living aside from Bob and Doug is going up to the station. So no
Gotcha.
animals, no nothing, no experiments. It is Bob and Doug and some crew supplies and some needed things on the station, but that's it.
Gotcha.
And the only thing NASA says that there will be a little bit of experimental results coming back down to Earth with Bob and Doug.
Yes.
Right.
Should, of course, the test flight go perfectly and they do go to the station. There'll be a little bit coming back, but nothing going up.
Gotcha. All right, let's see here. And again, this is Max Q&A. We try to get through as many questions as we can. Also, the other thing that we're doing here, I don't know if we've reached the right number of followers yet. Did we get to 70,000 followers? Or
I know we were close.
we were close. I don't know. Somebody in the control room or something, Chris B, let us know how close we are to that. But I know we're super close to the follower count there. Next question. Why did SpaceX start covering the windows on the side between the Super Draco modules? So were there windows being covered up on the Dragon, or?
So I think I know what this is referring to. So when Dragon and crew vehicles are undergoing their ground processing,
Right.
we put covers over the windows to protect them so the windows don't get damaged or chipped or anything, because they're not just windows, they are a vital part of the pressure hull of the vehicles. So we cover them to protect them, and then those covers come off. In Dragon's case, probably before it will be erected vertical for liftoff.
Gotcha. So there's like a protective covering while they're processing and stuff, so you don't crack the window, because the windows help keep the air for the astronauts in.
Yep.
Exactly.
Let me just summarize that real quick, right? Let's see here. Again, lightning round. In an emergency, can Dragon and Starliner dock with each other? So that's an interesting question. I'm going to go with Starliner is stranded in orbit. Could a Dragon go up there and rescue the astronauts in a Starliner?
I don't think so, right? Because the docking ports have like an active side and a passive side. Is
Right.
that correct?
Well, and the docking ports on the station have all the targeting, have all the things that Dragon and Starliner are trying to lock.
Right,
onto
the little
that's
target
where
thing
I'm
that
being
looks like
guided
this,
to.
where you're trying to. All right.
Yeah, and remember last year when the Russian automatic docking system malfunctioned, and we just saw the Soyuz just sitting there going like, I don't know what to do. I can't lock on. I don't think they could dock to one another, but they could certainly get close enough that if you had a spacesuit or pressure suits,
Something
you
like
could
that.
EVA transfer between vehicles. Yeah, but I don't think they can dock to one another.
Gotcha.
Right.
In the way both Atlas and Starliner launch, it's not like you could put an adapter or something on top of it, like an emergency adapter.
On either of them,
they
you can't
they
have
both
an
use the
adapter,
top
no.
of the capsule as their aerodynamic nose cone for launch, right?
Right.
Yes, the only difference between the aerodynamic nose cone is Starliner pops it off and discards it.
And then Dragon
has a hinge that opens and then closes, but
Gotcha.
you can't hide anything there. Yeah.
All right, so this is one, and we've known this is a thing for a while. Can SpaceX use the Super Draco thrusters to splash down safely if the parachute fails? So we're going back to that powered landing versus parachute landing that sort of got swapped around there. Any plans for that at all?
Elon has said in the past that in the worst case scenario of a parachute failure during descent, that the Super Dracos are still capable of attempting a soft splashdown. I don't know if we ever got a solid answer whether it's actually programmed to attempt that.
Right.
But if they think it's capable of doing so, it would make sense that they would at least program that as a contingency.
Right.
Yeah, I think the last I remember hearing was right after Demo 1. So admittedly, this answer could have changed.
That's true.
But it was exactly what you just said. They can do it, but I think they stopped short and said, but it is at present not a certified contingency.
Right, exactly.
Right. Gotcha.
Which when you use that phrase, not yet a certified contingency, well, you can kind of see that might be where it's arcing, but as of Demo 1, not yet. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, so something relative to Starship here. Can we speculate on why there's a big crane at the pad? It just says the pad, so has anybody seen a big crane at a pad? I don't know if that's talking about
At the launch pad, a big crane showed up.
at Boca Chica.
Yeah,
Okay.
Boca Chica. Yep.
Assuming, because if
however-
a big crane showed up at 39A, we're in trouble.
yeah, no, not at 39A. We're talking about Boca Chica again.
Okay.
But they haven't like started to remove Starship from the pad or anything like that. So I don't have any idea. Chris, any speculation?
No. I mean, I would imagine the stands in the vehicle assembly building at Boca is the same as the stand at the launch pad, just except for all the like plumbing and everything to get the propellant in. So I would think that the only reason to take it off the stand and bring it back into the VAB would be if it was just for like, so if it's raining, we can keep working.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think there's a huge, oh my gosh, we have to come back because we can only access this part of the vehicle from the assembly building.
Right.
You know.
Gotcha. All right, so more stuff down at Boca Chica. Will there be a flame diverter ready for SN5 or on the second test stand? So we've seen the second test stand. We've talked about they've got a deluge system, like some water spray, but there's no flame diverters or anything like that, right? So have we seen any indication?
Yet, so yeah, we haven't seen any yet. Eventually, that's going to have to happen for like super heavy launches and stuff, but we haven't seen one yet, Chris.
Now, we haven't seen one at Boca, but we have seen one.
Oh, that's true.
Because the flame diverter, the basic element of the launch stand at 39A for Starship that they're building within the fence is already constructed.
Right.
So we can see the flame deflector, we can see the stand. It's as tall as the 39A concrete.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's just unreal.
But for Boca Chica, we haven't seen one in Boca Chica, so saying it would be ready for as soon as SN5 is probably not correct.
Right.
Not yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So here's another good one about the GSE. We talked about the GSE, the ground service equipment. How does it disconnect when SN4 does its hop? Have we seen like an arm that swings back or just a plug that comes out, or have we haven't seen that yet? Hopper had to do it.
Hopper did
these
have
are
to
what
do
are
it.
known as these are what are known as quick release or
Right.
QDs, where basically it's just they're attached in a way that when the rocket starts to lift, they break away.
They just break away.
So there's no pyrotechnic that fires to release them. It's all just the force of the vehicle pulls them away.
It's sort of like
in
that thing at the
fact,
gas
if you
pump.
Yeah.
Have you seen the gas
when you
pump?
drive away with the gas?
Yeah, where Florida
pump in
man
your car,
leaves the
yeah.
gas thing in his car and
Yeah.
drives off. And
Hey, why did you choose Florida?
I just thought it was fitting. I mean, it's accurate. I like to be accurate here on
It is
NASA
accurate.
Spaceflight Live. But there's
Well,
a
it's
quick
accurate. I can't get
disconnect
mad at
thing
that.
there that emergency breaks away when you give it enough force pulling on it, right?
Yes.
Don't know it's exactly the same
exactly. Yeah, and there's actually a really good. I want to say it was ULA, but there's a really good GIF that somebody made of the Atlas V launch from Sunday of all of its umbilicals pulling away just
Right.
from the force of the rocket leaving the pad. Yeah.
Gotcha. So there are mechanisms that disconnect them intentionally, like they do expect them to disconnect. And then I also imagine there's some sort of valve or something there that closes it off, so you don't disconnect and then start spewing fluid everywhere, right? So there's a system designed for that.
Yeah, they're called fill and drain valves, and they are on either side. So the disconnect has one, and the rocket has
Right,
one,
on both
so that you
sides.
get two seals. Yeah.
Gotcha. So here's another thing we're talking about the second test stand. When do we think they're going to stack something on that second test stand? Can they safely test two starships at once? Might we see 5 and 6 out there at the same time?
I can't think of a reason why they'd want to do that because the
Look
test
cool.
objectives are mostly the same. So I mean, yeah, it would be cool. It would be
would look
awesome.
cool.
But I don't know if we'll see dual like parallel test flows for quite a while. What I could see is if for any reason the new one is like better or improved from the old one,
Right.
that whenever they remove the next starship from the pad via crane or via hop test, that they might just replace the old one with the new one, maybe if there's some upgrade that they did. But I don't think parallel flows is what we're looking for.
Gotcha. All right.
I completely agree, Thomas. So that means that, of course, we'll actually see one.
Which means that we're both wrong.
Happen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so talking about parallel flows and stuff like that, David said each of these test beds, there's quotes on it, test beds are for testing Raptors. 31 are needed for the first, well, you said 31 are needed for the first Starship. 31 are needed for the first Super Heavy plus the ones on top for Starship, right? So
No,
how many are
the booster will have 37, and Starship, the second stage, Starship will have 6.
okay?
For a total
Right.
of 41.
So it's a
Yeah.
total of 41. All right. So
With the caveat where Elon has hinted in the past that you don't need
Yes.
all of the Raptors for initial flights, so it's not a necessity to have all 37 on the first Super Heavy.
Right.
But that is what the operational vehicle
is it
will
37
have.
or I thought they changed that down to 31?
I believe it's
Did they
37.
change it to
With-
31?
It
Yeah, I
changes
thought they
all the
changed it to
time, but the
31.
current iteration
It does
is
change all the
37.
time.
Yeah.
Last I saw it was, well, let me go to SpaceX's new website.
All right. We'll get
That is-
confirmation. I'm pretty sure it's 31. But it's 31 plus 6.
Considering Chad is all
In-
saying 31, 31, 31, 31, 31.
Maybe we're a little behind apparently.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
all
it
right.
changed.
In any event, the question is about if they need to test every Raptor before it goes out. That's a lot of Raptors to test. So
It is.
having 3 or more test beds is necessary for this with a question mark. Now, do they test the Raptors at Boca Chica? They test the Raptors at McGregor.
Right, yeah. So the thing is that not all of the Raptor testing is happening at Boca Chica, and they've been testing Raptor even while they do all the tests with Starship prototypes that have nothing to do with Raptor.
Right.
They test these all at McGregor, where I believe they have 3 active Raptor test stands.
Right.
So there are tons of Raptor tests going on at McGregor, completely separate from the Starship testing. And engines only get sent to Boca Chica once they have completed McGregor testing.
Yeah. You know the
So
wacky thing?
they're already testing Raptors.
Oh my gosh, the wacky thing about that, we're already on Raptor SN4, right? From what we've seen, and we know
Yes,
there's more Raptors.
they're probably beyond that, but that's what we've seen so
Yeah.
far. Yeah.
We know there's already more in the flow that we just haven't got eyes on yet. But by the time we get to a Super Heavy, we're going to be like on Raptor SN80, 90. I don't
Yeah.
even know. Like we need bingo or
Oh,
some sort
yeah.
of guessing game.
And I believe we
Yeah.
have confirmed that it was 31 on Super Heavy, but the whole Starship system then would have 37. Maybe that's what we were thinking.
Yeah.
6 on Starship.
No, it was definitely 37.6 at some point.
Okay.
Like
They just
previously.
Because
changed it on
Elon
us.
specifically said the total number was 41, and as a nerd, that can't remain. It has to be 42.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
You know.
Elon also said he was flying the ITS to Mars next year. So, I mean,
Well, yeah.
y'all, there's one last question here, and that'll be the end of our questions for Max Q&A, and this is about that rescheduled Starlink. So we know that the weather for Starlink caused Starlink to push, and they just went ahead and pushed Starlink after DM2.
Yeah.
Do we have the date for the rescheduled Starlink yet?
No, not yet.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I expect to see
although-
that as soon as Demo 2 launches. We'll probably see that come up. So
Gotcha. Because they wouldn't say
because
like, oh,
exactly
the
what I was-
30th for Starlink 2, or whatever Starlink number this was, but then DM2 moves because weather or whatever, so we'll
Right,
wait until after
exactly.
DM2. Gotcha.
Because hang on. There's
Go.
an important element to that. The reason they can't have a date, although there is a notional target
Right?
to it, is because the drone ship needs to get back with the Demo 2 booster, because they need the drone ship to go back out farther to grab the Starlink booster. Because
Gotcha.
it's an internal mission, so recovering the booster is a primary mission objective.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So they have to bring DM2's booster all the way back, offload it,
Unload it.
and then send the drone ship all the way back out again, even further to get
It's-
to get the
Yeah,
Starlink booster.
It's probably at the earliest 8 to 10 days after Demo 2 is
Right,
when
right.
they could support Starlink.
And they just
Yeah.
have one drone ship capable of this right now. The other one's getting
Right.
retrofitted, or they're building another one, or something like that.
Just read the instructions. Should be ready in June-ish, early
Okay.
yeah,
July.
soon, but not
Um,
quite in time to help solve this
yeah.
problem. So yeah.
Gotcha. Well, let me see if I missed anything else here. There was the 31. Yeah, we were talking about 31s, and then Elon said.
Oh well,
about-
there we go.
Yeah, there's the tweet.
Elon said on May 3rd. That's when it changed.
Yep. Gotcha. So thanks. There were some control room things. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Super chat. We got Vlad. Vlad, we appreciate the member support there. Again, y'all, we're able to do this on a weekly basis and bring all of our other streams and videos and stuff like that to you because y'all support. So whether you're doing super chats, whether you're doing channel memberships, whether you're just watching, or dude, even if you do, like, you see us do a tweet, right? And you retweet the tweet or you like the tweet. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can support what's going on here, and they all help us so that we can keep on keeping on. But we appreciate everybody with the support here for NASA Spaceflight Live. In fact, let me do this real quick. We've got some launch directors over here. Special thanks to the launch director supporters, making it so that we can keep on doing this. Levi, Jared, Gerard, Dan, Kevin, Plush Vader, nice. Astro6, Olin, Dave Wolf, Benny Gibby, E Square, Adam Chance, Greg, and Mike. Thank y'all so much for supporting us at that launch director level. And then also, we have one of these, Wesley Evans, a flight engineer. Is that the top level? Is flight engineer the top level?
Maybe. I think
I believe so. There's,
I think
there's one above launch director. Yes.
Is there? All right.
Yeah,
so
yes,
I know that much.
across the board, we that is the top level. All right. So Wesley Evans at the top of the pile there.
we
Wesley,
go.
thank you for the flight engineer level support. We do appreciate it. If you're at that, what is it? If you're at launch director or flight engineer, the two top levels of the membership on the YouTube channel, we read your name out. We just say thank you specifically to you at the end of every NASA Spaceflight Live. So we do appreciate the support so we can keep on doing this. But as usual, we're just a couple minutes over. Did we miss anything? Thomas, Chris?
I hope to see
don't
you
think
all
so.
tuned in on Wednesday because we've got some important coverage to bring you. So.
Yep. And we're going to be...
And we'll have the broadcast schedule out to you probably Monday, so you can see what times we're looking to do different segments and all the really cool things that we've got planned. This has been a long time to plan it and a long time to get everything ready, and we can't wait to share it with you.
Yeah,
on Wednesday.
gotcha. And Chris, we're also going to have some interactive things. I think maybe in the next couple of days, if you're following NASA Spaceflight, if you're following Chris G_NSF on Twitter,
Indeed,
put some links to their names in the chat there. We're going to do
will
some
have
tweets on ways that you can get involved, right, Chris?
yes, indeed.
Well,
Yeah,
not you,
there will
but-
be interactive social media things that you'll see on our Twitter accounts, mine and at NASA Spaceflight, in the next couple of days. Yeah, and just use that hashtag, and we may show your post on the live stream.
Cool. All right. So again, y'all, we appreciate everybody joining us. This is going to be a big week. It's going to be a big week for crewed spaceflight. That's for sure. For U.S. spaceflight, DM2 coming up, where SpaceX is trying to return humans to flight from U.S. soil for the first time in almost 9 years. I said it right?
Yes.
9 years.
We had one question. It's really quick.
Oh, sure.
Someone wanted to know. Yeah, someone wanted to know when Bob and Doug capture the flag
Okay.
and bring it back. The last shuttle mission left a small little American flag for the first crew to follow them, to retrieve and bring back to Earth. And the question was, who should get it? Elon, SpaceX, or NASA?
Interesting.
My answer to that is I think SpaceX should get it because they won it.
I think they need to send it to Mars.
That's the real.
You know,
step
they
up.
can just yeah, they can
Put it
just
on
put it on the
the,
first Starship, and then they're like, well,
Yep.
we're going to do our own capture the flag. Like, we'll send it to Mars for a human to get.
It would be hilarious. This isn't a thing.
What do you guys think? Who should get it?
I think they should send it to Mars.
I think
Yeah,
SpaceX
there you
should
go.
get it and send it further into space and make
Yes.
someone else go capture it.
That's what I think.
There we go.
That's what I think. It would be hilarious, like as something you would see in a cartoon, like SpaceX get there, they're getting ready to get the flag, and as they reach to get the flag, it like scoots away and it gets in a probe and it flies the rest of the way to Mars, like further away, and it's like, now come get me at Mars, or maybe the moon and then Mars or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, folks, this is NASA Spaceflight Live. This was episode 9 of NASA Spaceflight Live. With me today, we had Thomas Burghardt. Thomas, thank you so much. Writer and live stream commentator, subject matter expert here at NASA Spaceflight. Thomas, appreciate you as always.
Thanks, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll see you on Wednesday.
All right, and then also Chris Gebhardt over here. Chris, thank you so much for joining us this week for NASA Spaceflight Live. Chris is, of course, the assistant managing editor, guy who does all sorts of stuff for NASA Spaceflight. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Wait, did we lose his audio?
Chris, did you mute?
Chris, are you muted? No, now you're not.
Nope, you're back. You're
Okay,
good.
go. You're good now.
Oh, Okay, I said it was a pleasure being on, and I can't wait to bring all the stuff to you guys starting on Monday for Demo 2.
All right, we definitely look forward to those DM2 streams that are coming up this week. And Chris will be out there placing remotes, running live stream cameras. He's going to be the guy on the scene doing that stuff. So, Chris, we really look forward to that and appreciate you being out there bringing us all that content this week. And lastly, I'm your host. I'm John Galloway here. I'm the live stream guy, and I hope that you enjoyed our episode of NASA Space Live. Again, thank you so much for all the support that makes these things possible, and we're going to go ahead and sign off for this week. So once again, thank you very much. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it later, nerds. Next time we'll see you, we'll be looking at DM2 going up into space, I hope. I'm hoping, but we appreciate you. We'll see you next time.
Chamber pressure looks good.